disconnect this. Gotta take this off. Oh my God. I've never been more tired in my entire life. I had probably 3.5, 4 hours of sleep. My whole head hurts. You know, when I lay down at night, it hurts. My ears hurt. My head hurts. Why? You know, I lost my hearing for 2 years. Like, I have a legitimate question, and I'm not being sarcastic when I say this. Is it that hard to figure out why someone has lost their hearing? Is it really hard to figure out why someone has lost their hearing? Maybe it's complicated. You know, there are so many moments in time in my head, like little movie clips of the behavior of doctors that I have not understood. And I went to get my hearing tested. It was prior to 20, it was a few years before 2017. And I was losing my hearing. I'd lost most of my hearing for about 2 years. And I had an appointment with the ENT, and I'm in the sound booth. And I know that I've lost a significant amount of my hearing. And I know this. I know I can't hear when I'm out and about. When somebody's standing in front of me, I can't hear them. You know, I'm starting to learn to lip read and stuff, right? And I'm coming out of the sound booth, and off to the left, close by, is the waiting room where all the people are crammed in like sardines, the inner waiting room. And as I'm coming out of the sound booth, the ENT doctor is saying really loud on top of his voice, "There's nothing wrong with your hearing. I told you," or something like this, loud enough so that everybody in the waiting room hears him say that. He laughs and says, "There's nothing wrong with your hearing." And so when I go back to the room, everyone's looking at me. Why would he yell this out? So that everybody could hear. Like, "You're wrong, there's nothing wrong with your hearing." So moments like this are kind of frozen in time in my mind. Why would you behave that way? Number one, there is something wrong with my hearing. Number two, why would you behave that way? So time went on. I continued. My hearing got worse and worse. And I wanted to see an ENT again, and you need another referral. Well, I didn't want to see the same guy because he told me nothing was wrong. I asked to see another doctor. The other doctor, you know, there was fishy stuff, like I was complaining from chronic pain and stuff. Everyone was not acknowledging all the damage that was done from this. Everybody was hiding what the previous surgeon had done to me. That this guy cut big holes into my sinuses. Everybody was hiding that, and at that appointment, I didn't know that there were big holes cut in my sinuses. And I was complaining of chronic pain and stuff, and I was saying, and the hearing loss. I said, I think, what it feels like to me? It feels like maybe there's like thick mucus inside here against the ear. And he thought that was ridiculous. I don't think that's ridiculous. And then years later, I get this, I see a copy of the report, and something like, there was some kind of comment like this same amount of hearing loss as her last hearing test, like moderate hearing loss consistent with the last hearing test. What he was referring to, the hearing test where I walked out and the other doctor announced loudly to the whole entire office, there's nothing wrong with your hearing. So in that previous, they could see the hearing loss, but the doctor announced to everybody, there's nothing wrong with your hearing, ha ha ha, when I walked out of the hearing booth. But they recorded that there was evidence of hearing loss. So why would you treat somebody like that? And also with the second one, she's worried about cancer. She's overly worried about cancer. I've never worried about cancer. I've never said to anybody, I'm worried I might have cancer in my sinuses or ear. I've never said that. It's bizarre, people who have complex health issues and stuff, like you can talk to someone and that the stuff that is in our records, stuff that's recorded from these appointments that never happened or wasn't said, is incredible. So I lost my hearing for 2 years, and no one could find out. No one knew why. Like, and I might be, it might be that complicated, but is it? And then I went to bed, I went to sleep, and you know what? Like, life is really hard when you've lost your hearing. Like, socially, you're walking around, you can't hear people. My TV, I would have it blasted to the loudest volume, literally the loudest volume. If you were out in the street, you could hear it. I couldn't hear it in here. And I had descriptive text on my TV. So I had to, every show I watched, I had to read. And I was trying to learn how to lip read. And I would shy away from everybody because I couldn't hear them. I couldn't understand them talk. And socially, you withdraw because you are no longer able to communicate with people. You can talk, but it's not a back and forth because you can no longer understand them. And then he mentioned that if if your hearing doesn't get better, come back in a year and we'll fit you for hearing aids. Well, there's no mention of that in the report. And then in December, I can give you more details, but it doesn't matter. And then a year later, he said, come back in a year. A year later, I went to bed one night and see, I had almost a year of sleeping around the clock, sleeping 18 hours a night, 18 hours a day, which why would I go from sleeping 3 hours a night to sleeping 18 hours a day? And I went to bed one night and I woke up. Something changed in my head or my sinuses. And I woke up. My hearing was back. My hearing was way too loud. Something felt like it changed in my brain or my sinuses. And my hearing was way too loud. I'd be on the street and the traffic driving by would be so loud, it felt like it was blowing my ears out. If I talked to someone face to face, if for any length of time, I would say, no offense, but can you please lower your voice? This is so loud, it's almost blowing my ears out. And there were a few times where I literally had to walk away because the person wouldn't lower their voice. And you know, in retrospect, they weren't yelling at me. My hearing was way too loud. And I suspect that you know, there was no explanation for any of this. I suspect that there was, because my sinuses, pardon me, I'm burping. I suspect, you know, my sinuses are so dysfunctional from the empty nose syndrome and the maxillary anastomosis. None of your sinuses literally no longer function anymore as sinuses. The mucus doesn't work. They're not cleansing. The stuff isn't coming out of your nose like it's supposed to. You know, sinuses are pretty well operating machines. They're an organ that knows what to do. But when your maxillary sinuses are cut open, you lack mucus, and the mucus that is in there is so thick that when a chunk comes out, it's not even sticky. It's like a piece of flesh. You can put a piece in between your fingers, both hands, and you can't even rip it. That's how thick it is. It's like ripping a piece of skin. You can't rip it. And I said to him when I had the hearing loss, can't you go in there and suction out what is in there? No, there's nothing in there. I don't believe that's true. I don't know, like, there's so many moments in time with medical, and I go back and, you know, what was that about? And I realized that I was right, or I was probably right. But fishy moments where the reactions from them are odd. Why would they be angry at me because I have hearing loss? Like the hostility, you know? Angry maybe because of what they did to me with the surgery. I have to stop at 15 minutes here.